All right, so I want to start a new series called Behind the Edit, where I go through some of my favorite pictures and edits, and I just show you the process behind them, how I got from, the picture I first took all the way to the finished product. So the picture we're going to be starting with today is this one right here. Now, I just recorded this and realized my screen capture on my laptop here wasn't going the entire time, so we're going to run through it one more time. So, we're going to go ahead and start with, say, one of these pictures here. So, let's pick one that we like. I like that one right there. So, right away, I'm going to go ahead and crop this down to a 1:1 ratio. I knew right away that I wanted this to really just be completely centered around the eye for this whole shoot. I mean, that's really what I was going for, is just focus on the eye and what kind of cool Photoshop can we do with, the colors and that space around the pupil there. So we're gonna just get that as centered as we can. I think that's pretty close right there. I'm pretty happy with that, and start with now some just basic exposure corrections here. So let's bring the exposure up just a little bit, nothing crazy. Contrast, I do want to bring that up a little bit just to make it a little bit more interesting there. I think that's pretty good. Shadows, we do want to bring up just so we can see more of that color around the eye. 32 is looking pretty good. Then highlights we can take down a little bit. Some of the whites we can take down. Really, this whole part of the eye right here is the focus. So we're gonna bump up the clarity a little bit just to give it a little bit of an extra punch. You can see really in the eye right here, if we bring down that clarity, it really hazes things up. If we bring it up, it really makes it pretty impactful. We don't want it that high. We don't want it to be too aggressive. So I'd say right around 13 is looking pretty good right there. We're getting some nice detail in the eye right there. Now, in addition to this, I'm gonna bring up the vibrance and the saturation, both by about 10-ish. I mean, it doesn't have to be spot on, but that's giving us some good color in the skin right here. We're seeing a little bit more orange as well as some more blue right here in the glitter. Now for the eye, what I'm going to do is I'm going to take this mask tool, use the iris enhance, and I'm just going to kind of brush around here. Now I'm going to bring the exposure up a crazy amount so we can see exactly where we're brushing, where we're hitting, so we don't miss any important spots there. Now, what this is gonna let us do is, I just wanna make sure that I'm getting this color around the eye even, and I don't wanna affect too much of the area around it, so I don't wanna drag the temperature down to be super cool and blue, and then have the rest of the image be blue as well. I'm just gonna erase and kind of clean up the edges a little bit there. That's a little bit small. Use the bracket keys to change the size on that, and just kind of brush around so that I'm not turning the eye whites too blue right here. Go back to the brush and just kind of do a little bit more work around the edges there. I think that's pretty good. Now, I'm gonna bring that exposure back down to something a little bit more reasonable. I think probably like right here, 0.59 is looking pretty good. We're also gonna bring down the temperature because we really want to bring out the blue in her eyes. That's why I had her as my model, because she has blue eyes just on this day. Or just some of the pictures just didn't turn out as blue as some of the others. So we're just gonna make that adjustment and bring out the blue that is already there. Saturation and clarity is all pretty good. We're just gonna leave that there. Really just focusing on that blue and the exposure there. So Hit done, zoom back out, and you see you got a really nice blue there. So what I'm gonna do, we can go to the tone curve here. Excuse me. Bring down the darks just a little bit. Bring up the lights a little bit. Just to kind of make a nice contrast. Kind of see that we're bringing in, it's getting a little darker here, but you can still see that color up there, which is really important. We want to have that color. Now, down here to saturation, we're going to bring the oranges up just a little bit. We don't want them to be too crazy, but we want that skin tone right there because we are still seeing some of that. We want it to look nice and vibrant. Now the blue, I don't need to bring that up too much. It's looking pretty good, honestly, because we did that mask over the eye. So just 6 right there. And we're also going to bring down the hue over towards this kind of teal side here. You know, the blue is nice, but I want it to be, I want it to feel a little bit more whimsical, I guess you'd say. Just something a little bit more out of the ordinary, something you might not see every day. This is, you know, kind of surrealism that we're going for. So I'm going to bring the highlights, the saturation right there, all the way up just so I can see what color I'm getting. And I want to kind of go for light orange and bring that saturation down to something that looks kind of reasonable. We're just bringing out the orange and the skin tone there even more. And then shadows, we're doing the same thing. Saturation all the way up so we can see what color we're picking. I want to go with this kind of teal here. And same thing, just bring it down. This one we're going to do a little bit less, kind of like 8 there. We don't want it to, you know, bring in too much teal around the eye there. Just enough so that we're still getting some color in this darker area here. Now, that's looking pretty good. Lens correction I am going to do here. I was shooting with Canon and it didn't get the lens right off the bat, so we're going to go manually select it. I was using the 100mm macro 2.8. So what we can also do is maybe we do want some vignetting. So which way do we want to drag that there? I'm not really seeing actually anything. We can do that in Photoshop. So let's just say that's good right there. Calibration, we do want to do a little bit here, just kind of dragging both of these sliders down here towards the teal side, bringing that saturation up a little bit so we can see it a little bit more. And then the orange, or the red up here, we're dragging it towards the orange side. Same thing. Really just kind of reinforcing that. And now that I'm looking back on it here, maybe I want to go up to saturation on the orange here and just bring it down a little bit more. Maybe actually to -6. It's slight, but it makes a difference. So now that we got that, we're going to right click, edit in Photoshop. All right, now we're in Photoshop. We can see the one we just did right here. Let's close that out. I'm liking how this one is turning out already. So first thing we're gonna do is unlock the background layer. Now, if you don't want to do that, you can also just hit Command J and it'll just make a new layer and you can just hide this. I like to just make a copy right there so I always have this original one to come back to if I make a mistake and I can't reverse it. So, what I'm going to do here is start with reshaping the pupil. So, what I did is I just found like a heart shape online, like on Google or something, and I'm just going to copy and paste it over into here. Now, what we're going to do, bring the opacity down just a little bit so we can kind of see where we're putting it, resize it to what we want, and place it over the center a little bit. Now I'm going to move it to the right a little bit. We want it centered with that pupil. Now, can bring that opacity back up. Now if we want, I'm going to command click on that or control click on Windows so we have that heart shape selection. Move down just hide this layer, move down to the layer with the eye right there. So now that we have this selection here, all we need to do is do Command-Shift-I to invert the selection. Now, what this is letting us do is work on the area around the heart shape. And if I take, you know, like a brush or something into the middle here, it's not gonna affect anything inside that heart. So we're gonna start with the clone stamp tool. And we're gonna click just somewhere in the eye, that's where we're pulling from, and just start brushing around here. So all we're doing there is just reinforcing that heart shape. Now I want to pull from somewhere a little bit brighter here. Oh, that looks perfect. That's a nice blend. Pull from somewhere down here. Great. Now we've got something that's looking pretty good. Now if I just hit Command D here, you see I've got these really harsh lines, and you know, while you can see that heart shape here, it's really, you know, obvious and easy to see. When you go in close, those harsh lines don't look natural. It's just a solid switch from the iris to the pupil there. So what we're gonna do is, before we do anything, we're gonna actually fix some areas. Command-Shift-I to invert the selection again. Fix some areas inside the heart here, just a little bit. So we're just brushing over that to make it so this is all pupil that we're working with. Brush over it just a few times. That's why I'm working with 25% opacity on that. No wonder. So make sure you got that figured out. And we can also do that right here with this glare. We can just remove that. Wow, that's working so much better. So make sure you check this stuff first so you're not like me making silly mistakes. So we can hit Command D now, and we see now we've got a much better pupil shape for that eye. You can see that all the way around. Now, what we want to do is just make these edges softer. So what I'm gonna do is actually use the spot healing brush and just kind of click around the edge. You see what that's doing there? It's kind of making the edge a little bit uneven. I'm gonna make this even smaller. I'm just kind of drawing along the edge, little bits at a time, nothing crazy. And what that's doing is giving it some variance. And we kind of want that. We want some of that looking like it's kind of bleeding in, blending with the pupil there. No, nothing crazy, just a little bit. And you can adjust this however you like. You can use the clone stamp tool to do this. You can use the spot healing brush like I am here, however you like. But just a little bit to make it a little less harsh. Now, in addition to this, let's just go back over it now that we have the hardness of the brush set down a little bit. Maybe make some of those edges a little less harsh. Just a little something. Nothing crazy. Now, we just want those soft edges to make it look a little more natural. Now, I'm just going through this quickly so you can just kind of see the process, but you can see there's a little bit of bleeding in now, so it looks a little bit more natural. Now, what I did removing the glare in the pupil here, we can also do over in the rest of the eye, like right here. So let's do that again. We're pulling just from this area with the option click to select where you're pulling from, and then just kind of brush over this area right here. Perfect. It's really giving us a nice blend. so we're seeing more of that color, which is the goal. Last step here is to just kind of add something in the foreground. I like to have something kind of in front of the camera when I'm taking pictures, especially. I'll lots of times just hold something in front of the lens. It just adds an extra layer of visual interest. It shows depth. So for the foreground, all I did was, we don't want to open that, we want to drag it in. All I did was, you can see, of course now I just closed it. It's fine. What I did is I just brought this just stock picture of bokeh. You can go to pexels.com to find just a bunch of free stock pictures, and that's where I got this one from. Resize it, move it over, say right here, perfect. And just hit OK. We're gonna delete this layer because we don't need it anymore. All we're gonna use that for is to just get the shape. So, what we're gonna do now, we bring down the opacity so we can see the eye a little bit there. And now we're gonna make an adjustment layer on the bokeh. The point of this is to just change the hue. We're gonna colorize it and bring it over to kind of that bluish teal color that we want to use. Bring up the saturation just a little bit or not, up to you. And what we want to do is link this to the layer right here, because we can see, if not, we're affecting everything, including the skin and the eye. We don't want that. We want it to just affect the layer, the bokeh, the foreground. So let's maybe move this up here a little bit. I like it right there, because we don't want too much of the skin bleeding through. We just kind of want that in the background. Now, what we're going to do now to kind of reveal the eye is add a layer mask. So add the layer mask, press B to equip your brush tool, or just go over to the brush tool here. Make sure it's a pretty big size. You can change that with the bracket keys, and then right click to set the hardness down to 0. That'll help us make a really soft edge and a nice blend. We don't want any sort of harsh lines, because that down there does not look natural. We want it to just look soft, like this is just floating around the eye, almost like someone threw a bunch of glitter up in front of the lens while the picture was being taken. So we can kind of, however much or however little of the eye we want to show, we can. I'm going to say right there is looking pretty good. So we'll call it there. Command S to save. You'll see it saving up here. Back to Lightroom, and we see we have our finished image saved into Lightroom now. And you can go to Library, Export, to export that image. I'm not going to export it because I already have that one made over here. So that's just the process I went through. I almost like this one better. But you can see in this one, I did take some of that glare out. And it does look pretty okay. There's a nice blend. I really took my time with it there. Same thing with around the eye. You can see there's some just nice soft edges. That's all it's about. It's just taking your time with it. So I really like how this turned out, actually. Some really good color and detail in the eye there. So I hope this helped. I hope this was interesting for you guys to see. I really had a lot of fun with this edit and this whole photo shoot. So I'm looking forward to just kind of showing some more behind the scenes and how I work through my edits and everything in the future. So I hope this helped, and I will see you next time.